Hi everyone, happy Thanksgiving and welcome to the Thanksgiving Long and Low workshop with Helen Olivia Flowers. I'm Rachel, I'm one of the owners of the studio and I'm going to be teaching your class today. For those of you joining in virtually, welcome to class. You should have a beautiful bucket of Thanksgiving flowers. We're working with a really seasonal, gorgeous, neutral palette today. Lots of whites, browns, copper colors, and then some fun dried and fresh accents. You should also have a vase that came in your kit. We're using an Accent Decor Birch Long and Low vase today. And you should have also received some dry floral foam, and we'll talk about how to prepare that for design. I am also going to be designing with a pair of floral clippers and a floral knife, but any type of cutting tool you have at home would be great to get ready before you start your class. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. We design at a pretty good clip in workshops, so if you can't keep up, one of the beautiful things about watching on YouTube is you can press pause and play as many times as you would like. So if we're going a little bit too fast, just pace yourself. The workshop today will be available forever on YouTube, so you can always reference it back, and you should also have an ingredient list in your kit so you can always reference the ingredient varieties that we're using. So why don't we go ahead and get started. Now, in order to prep your vase for class, you're going to want to soak your floral foam. Everyone received dry bricks of foam. And the trick to hydrating your foam for design is to fill a vessel that's deep and shallow enough for the foam to fully soak down. You want to throw the foam in the water and walk away from it. So let it sink on its own. If you push the foam beneath the water line, you'll wind up with air pockets in your foam. So just throw it in a bucket or fill your kitchen sink, walk away for 5 minutes and come back to it and it'll be ready to go. You will probably need to trim your foam a tiny bit, so I'll show you how I have placed my foam. I've taken one full brick and I've just dropped it into my vase, and then with a knife you'll need to trim the other little piece down to size so that it just slides in next to the larger brick. You'll notice as you place your foam that you've got a gap on either side, on the long side of the container. That is very deliberate. You want to have some room around your foam to be able to add water so your flowers can drink. So it's really key with foam that you keep it hydrated and wet and add water every single day to the top of the vase so that your flowers can live a good long life. So that's the prep work that needs to be done. I'm going to be designing today on a Lazy Susan, so I can give you guys kind of a 360-degree view of what I'm doing. And the first ingredient that we're going to reach for is going to be our Magnolia. So we're going to begin by laying a greenery base and kind of tracing out the shape of our design, giving ourselves a roadmap for what this is going to look like. So we're going to grab some pieces of Magnolia out of our buckets. Your buckets are really full, so just be careful as you pull each item out. The Magnolia is great for this time of year. The rich brown color really is complementary to all the fall flowers, and this is going to be a nice full type of greenery to work in first. So with your stems of Magnolia, they're quite large, we're going to split them into a few smaller pieces. So you can see I just lobbed off the top piece of Magnolia, and I'm going to focus first on the ends of my long and low. So I'm just inserting my Magnolia kind of horizontally. So I'll show you again. I've got a nice little piece of Magnolia. The bottom inch or two of my stem is completely clean and free of leaves. So I've got a nice clean piece of stem to insert into my foam. And I'm just doing this pretty horizontally because I want to fan out the ends of my design. So my Magnolia leaves are really overhanging this vase by 5 or 6 inches in each direction. So while the vase itself is 12 inches, we're going to create kind of like a 20-inch design to sit on our table. So long and lows are great because obviously it's a really low sight line, but they also fill a lot of space on a rectangular dining table. If you have any tiny little pieces of magnolia, you can insert them in the middle, or sometimes I even like to break off the individual magnolia leaves and just insert them around my design to get a little bit of coverage. So go ahead and take your magnolia and start cutting it apart, work it into your design. You do not have to use all of it. I've got a lot of magnolia in my bucket, so I'm probably gonna use 2/3 of my magnolia for now. At the end, we'll see, I might come in and add a little bit more. But again, really focusing the concentration of my magnolia off to the ends, and then just blending a few pieces in towards the middle. Now for the overall height of my design, I'm keeping my tallest point maybe 6 or 7 inches. And my tallest point will be right in the middle of my design, and it'll kind of fan down to the sides. One of my favorite tricks to use for my Thanksgiving table, I like to break off extra magnolia leaves, and I have a gold Sharpie at home. I always write my guests' names on their magnolia leaves and use them kind of as a place card on the table, so everyone gets a magnolia leaf. It's a nice way to assign seating too, if you're trying to, you know, keep family members apart. We all have that Thanksgiving drama in our family. It's nice to assign seats sometimes. All right, so I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. I'll do a spin for you guys. I've got a really good base shape for my arrangement. And I still have some magnolia left to work with at the end. I saved a couple little pieces. So now that I've got magnolia placed, I'm gonna come behind with my next type of greenery. This is one of my favorites this time of year. This is called Lacutho, and it's coming out of Holland. And the reason I love Lacutho, A, it's a really hardy green. It holds beautifully, but it's got a great shape to it. So you'll see there's like a little bit of a cascade to the Lacutho. So I love using Lacutho around the vase line in my long and low. So look how pretty that will look, just draping out. I'm gonna cut my Lacutho down a little bit shorter, and I'm also going to strip away some of the lower leaves. So anytime you're designing, whether it's in foam or in water, you want to make sure that the stems that you're putting into your container are nice and naked and free of leaves, because you don't want to contaminate your water source. So I've stripped away all of the low-lying leaves here. It's going to give me a nice stem just to slide into the foam. And I'm going to work my Lacutho in right along the vase line. And the vase line is where the foam meets the vase. So we're just working on hiding some of our mechanics. We don't want our guests to be able to see our floral foam. So this is a great coverage of our vase line. Okay. As I'm placing my stems, I'm making sure that they're really well tucked into the foam. It's important that your flowers are able to drink, so you want to push them in towards the bottom of the vase. So as I cut my stems, I'm trying to push in, you know, a good 3 to 4 inches all the way down towards the bottom of the vase. Okay, so I'll give you guys another spin. You can see now we've blended in some of our Lacutho, and one of the things I love is how this drapes, so really pretty, and a nice contrast to the magnolia, which is such a linear foliage. This is a lot softer. All right, so now that I've got that placed, I'm gonna come behind with my last type of greenery, and we have such a generous handful of seeded eucalyptus for this class. So we've got a ton to play with. This is the buried or seeded eucalyptus that we're going to be working with. This is another type of greenery that is super long lasting, easy to work with, and can serve a variety of different purposes in your arrangement. So we're going to cut apart our eucalyptus, and I'm going to come up closer to the camera to show you how I would cut down a stem of eucalyptus. So each stem, of course, is gonna look different, but you can really chop this into multiple pieces. So I'm gonna cut one piece right here with my clippers. So I've got one piece. I'm gonna cut another piece right here with my clippers. And then I've got a third piece. So you're gonna perform a little bit of surgery. You're gonna cut apart your stems into smaller, more workable pieces. And then you're gonna take your eucalyptus and you're just gonna cover it all over your arrangement. So I love to put eucalyptus lower down in my design so it's kind of covering up the foam and sitting at the baseline, and it's just pretty cascade. So I'm gonna put the majority of my eucalyptus along the baseline. So you can see I've got a couple of pieces tucked in right here, another right here. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Anytime I concentrate greenery in one area, so along the baseline, I wanna make sure that I'm also blending it in other parts of my arrangement. So you wanna be careful that you don't wind up with a collar of eucalyptus just in a row along the baseline. We wanna make sure we also put a few pieces higher up in the arrangement. So make sure you're doing that, make sure you're blending. Okay. If you like a really gardeny arrangement, the eucalyptus is a great ingredient to create that effect with. You can be a little bit more dramatic with how far your eucalyptus cascades out of your vase. So you decide. If you're a little bit more conservative in your design style, you might want to keep it a little bit more trim and tucked. All right, so there we go. I'm really happy with how this is turning out so far. We've got a really lush, full look with our green up, and we've got a great backdrop to slide our flowers into now. So at this point, we're gonna transition into the flowers, and the first ingredient that I'm gonna reach for is my kale. So we've got beautiful ornamental cabbage. Okay, here we go. We've got 5 stems of white kale. This is coming in from Holland, and on the Dutch market, it's called brassica. It's a gorgeous, mostly creamy white with a little bit of blush in the center variety. And with our kale, we're gonna do a little bit of conditioning to get it show ready for our arrangement. So we're gonna peel away some of the low-lying leaves on our kale, and I'll come up closer so you can see what I mean by that. So these are the lowest leaves, and oftentimes they show a little bit of damage from transport. So I'm just gonna carefully remove a few of them. And by removing some of the leaves, I'm also able to then massage and reflex out some of the petals. So look how much prettier that is when I fan back some of the petals. Really gorgeous. So we're gonna do that with all of our kale. We'll peel some of the lower leaves and then we'll flare out the petals. Kale is not a flower that bruises, so you can really get in there and massage it open. It does not mind being handled. Okay, really pretty. So we've got 5 that we're going to be putting in our long and low, and we are going to put 4 of them on the corners, so 1 on each corner, and then we'll have the 5th kind of as a hat in the middle of our arrangement. So again, we're going to cut our stems to be long enough so they can kind of sit towards the bottom of the vase where the water reserves live. My stem is probably 6 inches long. And I'm gonna start by placing my first kale on one corner. So there he is, just sitting facing out. And a little tip for those of you designing at home, when you insert your flowers into your vase, you never want to put your stems straight up and down unless you're focusing on the center top part of your design. So get comfortable inserting at a 45-degree angle so you've got a really pretty face of the flower pointing out. So there we go. There's my next kale. Another tip for those of you who are new to design, you never want to be too focused on a perfectly symmetric arrangement. So if things are a little bit off center, that is great. That's how it's supposed to look, keeping in mind that nothing in nature is perfectly symmetric. Okay, so there we go. We've got our other corners, and then we're going to pop one. I'm going to do it a little bit off center. So this kale that I put in the center is going to be my visual cue to myself. This is the tallest I really want to go with this long and low. So this is going to be my tallest point. Everything else will fan and slope down to the sides. So it's nice to have a visual cue. Don't go higher than this center kale and you're going to be in good shape. So now that we've got our kale placed, we're going to reach for our next flower, which are gorgeous Playa Blanca roses. So Playa Blanca is our absolute favorite tried and true white rose. It's just a good big-headed true white. A lot of white roses come in much smaller head sizes, so you don't get as much fill in your vase. And a lot of white roses also have a really yellow or green undertone. So this does not. It's a super pretty long-lasting white rose. So with our roses, I'm going to come up to the camera again so you can see. This is a wholesale condition rose, meaning there is going to be some blemish, there's going to be some damage from travel. If you look at my rose, I even have a little spot of rot on one of my outermost petals, and this is completely normal when you get wholesale roses. So end consumers often don't see flowers in this condition because your florist has already prepped and conditioned them before they get to you. So since this is a workshop, we're going to do the hard work together. So the first thing you need to do to condition your rose, we're going to yank off all of the leaves. And quick little blurb about roses. One of the best giveaways if you have healthy flowers or roses is actually looking at the leaf. If a flower has been stored for too long or is aging, your leaves will actually start to get crunchy and they'll start to discolor. So I always tell folks, if you are buying flowers, make sure obviously you like the way the flower itself looks, but for health and age of the flower, the leaf is always the dead giveaway. So we're going to next, when the leaves come off, start working on peeling back the guard petals. So the guard petals are the outermost petals on the rose. They are almost always damaged. So we're going to very carefully just peel away the outermost petals. And you'll notice as I do this, I'm not touching the face of the rose. Roses are extremely prone to bruising, so you don't want to overhandle the face of the flower. I'm just touching from the outer perimeter, so I'm not upsetting the pretty part of the rose. There's no steadfast rule for how many guard petals need to come off. It really depends on the rose. So sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll only need to peel back 1. Other roses you might need to peel back 10. But it doesn't actually hurt the rose. And because I always get asked this in live workshops, these are the sepals, the green pieces that hang down. We don't want to mess with those. Those stay on the rose. They help with holding the petals together. So they'll become invisible once we add it to our arrangement. We're only peeling off the white part, the white petals. So we're going to do that with all of our white roses. So a little bit of work to be done. And if you've ever wondered why wedding flowers cost so much, imagine having to do this step to the tune of 10,000 roses. So it's very time consuming to get these flowers to look show ready for a big wedding or event. Luckily today, not 10,000 stems. favorite little tricks. If you ever wanted to get your roses opened more quickly, there's two things you can do. And this would be useful if you were hosting, for example, a dinner party and your roses were really tight. You can blow on the face of a rose and it will relax and open your petals. The other trick that you see oftentimes is flipping the rose upside down and just rolling the stem between your hands, almost like you're trying to start a fire, will also relax and open your petals. All right, so I am happy with how my roses are looking, and I'm ready to start adding them into my long and low. So I'm going to again cut the stems to about 5 or 6 inches. My roses and all of the flowers we're handling from this point on, we want to give them a nice deep angled cut because that will open the most surface area on the stem and give them the best chance at drinking. So nice angled cut, 6 or so inches so that the stem can slide all the way down into the vase and drink lots of water. And we're going to insert at a 45-degree-ish angle so you get the face of the rose pointing out. So really pretty. And I'm just gonna start working these in all over. Don't be afraid to play around with height. So this one's sitting a little bit lower than this guy is who's up here. And then I'm also going to be deliberate about putting a rose on each end of my long and low because I don't want to just have like an empty void off to the sides. This particular design can get a little bit tricky because we've got huge magnolia stems and kale stems in our foam. So if the rose stem is not sliding in easily where you want it to sit, just pull it back out and try a spot that's 1 or 2 inches to the side and you should be fine. So I'm just gonna spin, I'm evenly distributing these all over. And I think this is such a sophisticated color palette, the white and the brown. It's very Ralph Lauren. It still feels fallsy even though it's neutral. It's always interesting to me which color palettes on our website sell the best for holidays. And our pastel autumn, which is a very neutral color palette, is definitely the runaway hit this holiday. So it seems like our customers really gravitate towards this style of design rather than a really saturated dark fall design. So that's interesting. So I've got my roses placed and you can see I've got pretty good coverage on all sides. I'm just gonna spin it around a bit as you place your roses. And I'm loving this very elongated look. And you can see that my shape is starting to fan or taper down, not in a really dramatic or pronounced way, but my highest point is definitely in the middle of my design and I'm just slowly graduating down to the sides. And I've still got plenty of open spaces because we have more flowers to add. All right, so our next ingredient is a special ingredient and they look small and not very mighty, but this is probably the most sought after rose color for the entire fall season. This variety is called golden mustard and it is an incredible caramel brown color. It's a much smaller rose compared to the Playa Blanca, but it's going to give us just a pretty layer of color. So we're going to again peel off the leaves. There are tiny thorns on these stems, so just be careful as you handle. And we're going to peel back any outer petals that are damaged, just like we did with the Playa Blanca. And because these are smaller, I'm going to blow on them to open the petals a little bit. Golden mustard is a much slower opener. So later in the week, by Thanksgiving, certainly these will start to really get nice and open. So I'm just going to pop these in wherever I've got a nice little open spot, and I just love that little hit of caramel color. I think it's gorgeous next to the magnolia leaves. And you'll see when we add our mums next, it's really going to be an even more pronounced punch of caramel. Okay, so really pretty, starting to fill in. Next up, we're going to play around with some mums. We've got some gorgeous colors of caramel and copper. We are not a big mum shop. Anyone who follows Helen Olivia on Instagram and social media, you know that mums are not a super big staple of our studio, with the exception of November. So once Dahlia season turns off, we have a quick little shot of mums, just really Thanksgiving season. And we're pretty particular about the mum varieties that we'll buy here in our studio. We like the more one-colored mums rather than there's a lot of bicolor or lavender or green mums, not so much our thing, but we do like these really rich autumn hues. The first mum that we're working with is a copper disbud mum, and we're going to strip away the leaves. And I just want to flag these flowers as being a little bit more delicate because the head of the flower, the bloom, is so big, they are prone to snapping. So just be careful when you insert these into the foam. You only want to push down from the stem. If you try to push down on the head of this flower, it's going to snap off. So just very carefully push down with the stem. So we're going to work these guys in all over our arrangements. And we're going to be cautious to spread evenly the color. So let's try to get one caramel color mum on each side and one copper color mum on each side. So we're just gonna slide these in. Okay, great. All right, so that's filling in really nicely. And you can see that we are almost fully covered. At this point, we just have little holes that we're going to be popping in some accent blooms. So the next ingredient that we've got is a leucadendron cone. And these are a really, really fun accent for fall. I'm going to come up close so you can see the pattern on them. It almost looks like, I think, like a jester pattern that you would see on a jester costume. Really, really pretty. And these guys, we're just gonna pop in where we've got a little space. I like to keep this stem a tiny bit longer just so they can pop out a little bit. I wanna see them. If we recess them too far down into our arrangement, they will get totally lost. But what a fun way to bring even more brown into this color palette. And fall is really all about texture, so it's big pod season. So that should clear out your floral bucket. And now we're ready to reach into our bag and grab the last of the accessories. We use a lot of dried goods for fall season. Lotus pods are a staple. It's just really pretty texture, and it's something that you don't necessarily see from afar when you look at this design, but when you're sitting at the table and up close, it's fun to look into the arrangement and pick out these cool little accents. So these are picked, they're not living, and they don't really need to be water sourced. We're just gonna slide the pick down into the foam. I've placed my first one right there. And I'm gonna place my others. Okay. So really, really cool texture, and yet another shade of brown that we're layering in. Next up, I'm gonna carefully pop in some dried wheat. I love wheat this time of year. I think it feels a little bit rustic, and it gives, again, that really pretty dried accent to our floral design. With the wheat, I'm gonna recommend that you place them on the ends of your design so they kind of elongate our long and low, but you can put them wherever you like. I just like on the ends. And again, this is a dried element, so you don't need to be super precise about getting this down into the foam. It'll be happy wherever you put it. Okay, so that's my wheat placement. And last but not least, actually I lied, we have 2 more things. But the second to last ingredient is going to be a little bit of fruit. We love fruit mixed into arrangements at Helen Olivia. And if you've been following us for any length of time, you know that we always add fruit to our Thanksgiving long and lows. We have in our bags hyacinth stakes, which are just green wooden dowels. And we're gonna use these to give our pears a stem. So I'm gonna take the hyacinth stakes and just cut them in half. You can even break them in half with your hands. They're easy to snap. And I'm going to look at my fruit, pick out the pretty side. So this, I think, is the prettiest side of my pear. And I'm gonna take my hyacinth stake and I'm just going to skewer it. And you wanna do it gently. It's very easy to accidentally take your stake the whole way through your fruit and poke it out the other end. So just gently pop it in. And then you're gonna pick a home in your arrangement to nestle your fruit in. So I've got a hole on this side. Let's see. All right, so I'll spin it around so you can see. But look how gorgeous that pear is. And it's really like the pears are the chef's kiss, perfect last touch to this long and low, because it's yet another like brownish goldish hue. So you can see how everything's just complementing the mums and the golden mustard roses and the pears. It's really just magical. So we're gonna pop our pears in. If you don't like pears, you can substitute any type of produce. Pomegranates would be cool in here, Granny Smith apples, all sorts of different fruit options. So I'm really happy with how this is filled in. The last ingredients are our amazing Choco Bear Cymbidium orchids. This variety of orchid, in my opinion, is the best of the best. It's called Choco Bear, and the coloring is almost exactly the coloring of our pears, which is kind of cool. So it's like a greeny gold center, and then the lips of the orchids are a beautiful, rich, rusty brown. So really pretty, very healthy orchid. And they live in this little water tube. So we take the blooms off the stem, pop them into these little water tubes, and they're really nice and happy living in a water tube. You just wanna make sure your water tube is actually filled before you insert it into your arrangement. So if water has fallen out in transport, just refill your tube and then reattach the lid. And I'm noticing that that is true with mine. So I'm gonna just refill off camera. Here we go. All right. So the nice thing about a water tubed bloom is it's a great final addition to an arrangement because you can just slide it anywhere. It doesn't take a whole lot of room. So I'm just gonna pop in my little orchids wherever I like. There we go. Okay, great. So my orchids are now in place, and that's all of my ingredients in a long and low. I'm super happy with how this turned out. I'm gonna do a final check to make sure that I can't see any foam down at the baseline. If you can, maybe rearrange where some greenery is, or if you have leftover magnolia, you can pop those in at the end. But this is how mine turned out. I'm gonna be really, really careful and diligent about adding water to this once a day. If you are looking for a great hack to add water, turkey basters this time of year are awesome to add water, or you can just put the entire thing under your kitchen faucet on a low drip and let it fill back up. The flowers should do really well. They're all long lasting, so as long as they're out of heat, direct sunlight, and they're getting water, you guys should all be in great shape for Thanksgiving. If you notice any of your fruit starts to go soft, just pull it out and replace with something new out of your fridge. And that is pretty much it. I hope you all had fun designing, and if you are interested in taking more classes, we just released our spring 2024 calendar. We have virtual options, we have in-studio options, and for the first time releasing really fun date night workshops where you can come with your partner or spouse or any significant person and take class together. So we are looking forward to that. And I wish you all a very, very happy Thanksgiving. Thanks so much.